Welcome to RPG Community College. My name is John Burgundy. I am the dean of this prestigious institution, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Grim Dawn, more specifically, the build I've been playing recently, which is a dual-wielding chaos damage Sentinel. Down in the description, you're going to be able to find links to the build's Grim tools, and some timestamps in case you want to skip around to different parts of the video. I'm also going to recommend having the gear for this build before you play it. It's not a beginner or a low-budget build, but a lot of the gear is quite flexible. The only pieces of gear that are going to be mandatory are the Darkblade set and Mythical Voidrend Talons. But I would like to start by giving an overview of the build. A Sentinel is an Oathkeeper and Occultist class combination. We're going to be dual wielding some pistols, and we focus on dealing chaos damage. For our offensive stats, we managed to get 3000 offensive ability without Ascension, and with Ascension we're going to have around 3450. We managed to get 2250% increased chaos damage without any procs, and 2750% with procs. In total, we get 105% chaos resistance reduction, and our tooltip DPS in-game on the character sheet is going to be 160,000 under the right conditions. It also says that our highest damage dealt is 436,591. I have no clue how that happened, but it's a thing apparently. For our defensive stats though, you're going to have anywhere from 600 to 2200 health regen depending on buffs and procs, 2600 DA without any buffs, and 3000 DA with buffs, but it's super easy to get buffed. All you gotta do is attack one time, you'll just shoot up to like 2900 DA. We get 15,500 health, 9% attack damage converted to health, around like just under 2900 armor, 19% damage absorption, and 154 flat absorption when we have Ascension up, which is basically all the time. I've cleared Crucible 150 to 170 pretty easily. I used the Blessing of Ulu, Empyrean, and Ulzuin. I didn't use any banners, and it took me about 15 minutes. If you manage to get some stun resistance on some of your rare gear, you're not going to need to take the Ulu Blessing. As far as the Shadow Realm goes, I'm kind of waiting for the most recent coming up patch to kind of benchmark that. I have been able to do Shard 50, but it's pretty RNG based on the boss stream right now. But I do think this build will be good for farming, like around Shard 50 and Hardcore. The toughest enemy I've killed is Lokar. This build is actually really good at farming Lokar. So if you're looking to get your hands on a Lokar set, this will be a good build to do it with. Here in the Occultist skill tree, I decided to max Solael's Witchfire. This is going to be giving us a lot of flat chaos damage and attack speed, which is pretty important for the build. We are a chaos damage build, so we do take 3 points in the Consecrated Blade. I ended up maxing second right just for the percentage chaos damage, but this was one of the last skills that I leveled up. And here we have Possession. I maxed this. You want to put as many skill points into this as you can. I got Curse of Frailty up to level 5 just to get some decent AoE on it. And there's a modifier on our gear that's gonna give this skill minus 25% cast resistance, so that's pretty nice. In this build we're able to get Blood of Dreeg all the way up to 26. The offensive ability and health regeneration help out a lot. And the flat acid damage it gives is getting converted over to chaos damage. A nice soft cap, Aspect of the Guardian. It doesn't scale well past level 12. Over on the Oathkeeper side of things, I ended up maxing Smite. This is a great weapon pool skill, and you should put as many points into it as you can. I put 1 point in Vire's Might, and 1 point in a Tectonic Shift, just for a little extra range on the Vire's Might. I maxed Righteous Fervor and Consecration. Consecration is going to give you a real nice defensive ability buff and attack speed. The elemental resistance doesn't hurt either, and the armor is really good as well. For Retribution, I only got it up to level 9 because that's kind of a threshold, because the only stat we make use of is the retaliation damage added to attack, and we don't even really make that much use of it, but it's nice to have. I maxed Presence of Virtue, Haven, and Rebuke. Presence of Virtue helps out a lot with energy regen, which we do need, and a good amount of flat offensive ability. Haven gives us 20% health, which is very nice, and Rebuke just gives us some flat physical, which you can always have more of. I put 1 point into Resilience. I max Ascension. This scales great with levels. I wish I can get more in it, but don't really have the gear. And I soft cap Clarity of Purpose. I didn't think it was really worth it to invest more than 12 points into it. I ended up putting 65 points into physique, 42 points into cunning, and 0 points into spirit. Here's a couple pictures to illustrate exactly how I spent my skill points. This devotion tree is actually pretty straightforward. If you want a good look at every devotion I take, I'm going to have to point you down to the Grim Tools link in the description. You'll be able to look over it as much as you want. But I will explain some of the more important aspects of what's going on. Basically, the only thing there is to explain is Aeon's Hourglass. This is a devotion that functions like this. Any currently active cooldowns will be reduced by 6 seconds when this devotion procs, and then it will go on cooldown. It does not benefit from its own cooldown reduction. And this is really useful because we have a lot of abilities that have really long cooldowns, like Behemoth and Chariot. And Dying God has a 30-second cooldown, so under the right circumstances, it'll be affected by Aeon's Hourglass twice, reducing its cooldown by 12 seconds, which is really, really good. Ascension from the Oathkeeper, which is a super powerful ability, has a 20-second cooldown, so basically anytime you activate Ascension, its cooldown's going to get lowered by 6 seconds because of the durations of the cooldowns of both Aeon's Hourglass and Ascension. So this allows you just to spam Ascension whenever you want off cooldown, and it's always just going to get its cooldown reduced. And that's really pretty much it. Everything else is kind of self-explanatory from looking at it, like Solael's witchblade, lower cast resistance and whatnot. There isn't really too much to talk about here. But now I will show how I built the devotion tree, for anyone who's curious. If you're not really that interested, feel free to just skip ahead. And now we have the gear. This character is wearing mostly legendary items, and none of them are target farmable. But a lot of the gear is pretty flexible, and very few pieces are actually required to start playing the build. And I will be going over some alternatives that you can use after I explain what I'm wearing. But I will start going over every piece of gear that I have in order of importance, starting with the mythical Voidrun Talons. These gloves are going to convert all the physical damage from Righteous Fervor into chaos damage. This is kind of like the crux of the build, and what I basically started theory crafting this whole thing around. Next we have the Darkblaze set. This is going to be doing a lot of things for us. The amulet is going to be adding an effect on the Blood of Dreeg that gives us 8% attack speed, but more importantly, it's also going to make it so that 100% of our acid damage is going to be getting converted into chaos damage, and this is global. This is not just the Blood of Dreeg skill that's going to be getting converted to chaos damage. Any chaos damage that we have is going to any acid damage we have is going to be getting converted to chaos, including our retaliation, which then gets added into Righteous Fervor. The Darkblaze Incinerator, a one-handed pistol, is going to give us the ability to dual wield, so we look extra badass, and it gives us a weapon pool skill, which is going to boost our damage a lot. Unfortunately, the helmet and the belt aren't really doing much for us except for completing the set and giving us some increased damage. But the set bonus from the Darkblaze set is really powerful. It's going to make it, the 4-piece bonus makes it so that Curse of Frailty reduces chaos resistance by 25%, which is 25% more damage, so yeah, kind of mandatory for the build. Next up is the Mythical Exterminus. This is a very powerful pistol for the build. It's giving us +1 to all skills Occultist and Oathkeeper. It does a good amount of chaos damage, but most importantly, it's also reducing chaos resistance by 20% from the proc on the gun, which is just amazing. I mean, you really can't ask for more out of a weapon than this. And now for our metal, we have the Mythical Black Star of Deceit. This is a really, really good blue item. It's giving us 5% attack damage converted to health, chaos damage, plus to some of our skills. And the proc, Black Star, gives us non-stacking flat resistance reduction, which is good because we don't take the mana core devotion. And this is the main reason for that right here is this item. For our rings, we have a Void Heart, just plus chaos damage, some plus skills to Ascension, health offensive ability, and minus 10% chaos resistance. It's a really good ring for the build. The second ring is a mythical entropic coil, is why I ended up deciding on. I did try using a rare retaliation ring from Ancient Grove, but in the end this just came out on top. The proc on it's actually really good. It does a good amount of damage, and it just gives us a lot of flat damage, percentage damage, offensive ability, resistances. I mean, it's just a really strong ring for the build. For our relic, I use a Serenity. This is just a crazy good relic. +1 all skills, Aether and Chaos resistance, always nice. 300 health. Thing's just amazing. And it gives you a Circuit Breaker ability. So in those dangerous situations, like when you're taking a lot of damage, you just don't get one shot. And it makes you like kind of really tanky for like a short period of time. This thing definitely helps out a lot when you're farming Lokar. For our chest, I use the Armor of the Three. I combined this with the shoulders from the same set, just to get the plus chaos damage. And it gives us some acid retaliation that gets converted into chaos and then added to our basic attack, which is nice. But really the main reason I like this chest is because it gives the resistances we need, offensive ability, and it has a high amount of armor on it. We get close to 2900 armor on this build, which just feels really good to have. And to complement the chest, we have the shoulder guards of the three. This pretty much does the same thing that the chest does. It's giving us that 2-piece set bonus and just a lot of good stats. For the boots, I have a just pair of crafted stoneplate greaves. These are actually a magic pair of boots that I'm wearing, but they're pretty good for the build. You need pierce resistance, like very badly in this build, and these give me 60%, and I'm not even overcapped. So pierce resistance is something you're going to need to get in your boots or on your pants. This brings us to our last item, the Drieg Sect pants. Really not much to say about these pants. They kind of fit in the build. I'm using them because they're kind of the best I have, not necessarily because they're the best in slot. You can definitely do better than these pants. Just try to get just a better rolled pair of these pants. Something with pierce resistance, a little more Aether resistance, like couldn't hurt, more offensive, defensive ability, anything. We do have some retaliation damage on here, but retaliation damage just really isn't that great for the build. I know it does do a little bit for us, but it's nothing I would focus on getting. And really just as far as the boots and the pants go, just get anything that caps off your pierce resistance between these two slots and gives you as much offensive and defensive ability as you can get. Another good option for your chest slot would be the Mythical Vestments of Severed Faith. The aura gives you flat chaos damage and percentage chaos damage, which is really, really good for your chaos damage build. And I would pair these with a Xantaran Shoulder Guard, which is going to give you +3 to Blood of Drieg and Ascension. Which giving plus skills to Ascension is really good. It scales great with plus levels past its cap. And another good set that would work really, really well with the build is the Rosin set. It's kind of like a Nightblade Soldier Occultist set, but getting the chest and shoulders will give you the 2-piece bonus. That'll give you +% chaos damage. I was actually using this set before I ended up finding the last piece of the Sentinel set I needed. The Rosin set works very well, and you won't be disappointed. As far as components are concerned, if you want to know what I used on every single piece of armor, that's what the Grim Tools is for. But there are a couple components on this build that are absolutely mandatory. For your weapons, you're going to want to use 2 Seals of the Void. Both of these seals are going to add a weapon pool skill for you to use, and this is going to increase your damage by a ton. They're way better than anything you could ever put on these weapons. The DPS increase from Seals of the Void are just too big not to use. For your augments, on your rings and your amulet, you're definitely going to want to use Osir's Temper. It's just too good to pass up as well. Flat chaos, percentage chaos, OA and DA, you'd be crazy not to use this. The rest of my augments mostly focused around getting health, because the build can be quite low on HP if you don't really invest into it, and that's where I put that investment into for my HP was into my other augments. There's some pretty good health plus chaos damage augments for your weapons, And you can get DA and health augments. I think they're from Solael vendor? Yeah, Solael's blood binding. Using these augments is going to give you a nice increase to your HP. I leveled this build just like you would like a standard Bloody Pox build. I maxed Bloody Pox, then I put some points into Curse of Frailty and Vulnerability, a couple points into Blood of Dreeg, maxed Aspect of the Guardian, and then maxed Possession. Then I went into the Oathkeeper tree, and I started investing into Righteous Fervor and Smite, and kind of turned the build into like a hybrid melee caster type of thing. It was actually pretty fun. I would recommend it. If you had the gear for it, you could level this build as a dual wield range build. If you had 2 Devil's Tongue pistols, those would be pretty good for leveling a dual wielding chaos damage pistol build. You would just need like a pair of them and some Seals of the Void, and that would probably hold you over for at least until like level 70 or 80. Leveling as an Oathkeeper and using Virus Might works as well. I mean, Oathkeeper is a great, really strong leveling class too. There's quite a few different ways you can level this build. I wouldn't say any of them are really bad. If you have the gear, actually leveling as a dual wield range build can be really powerful and quick. And Virus Might is a movement skill, and it can do a good amount of damage as well. And Bloody Pox is just, well, it's Bloody Pox. It's fun to use, it clears the whole screen. They all have their benefits, it's just kind of up to you to play what you like. Of all the builds I've made, this has got to be my favorite one. It definitely feels the most well-rounded out of all of them, and it's not really lacking in any defense or offense. And the only thing that I can think to improve is to get some stun resistance on the rare gear that I have. If you're curious how I get up to 2200 regen, I do this by using the Royal Jelly Potions. You get the recipe for these as a quest reward in Act 2. All you need to do is get 3 Royal Jellies and give it to one of the rovers, and he'll give you a recipe in each difficulty. And you can take all 3 of these jellies and they stack. There's also one that gives you energy regen, which is pretty good, and there's one that increases your health and energy. I usually use all of these potions. They're really good buffs. I don't use them all the time, just like when I'm fighting like say Lokar for instance, or really just doing any hard content. I always pop my jellies. Just from having like if you pop all the jelly potions and you have Blood of Dreeg active, and Lizard and the Behemoth constellation, that's 1000 passive regen a second. And then when Giant's Blood procs, it boosts it up to 2200. This is no small amount. Giant's Blood is usually always going to be up when you need it, at the start of combat when the most enemies are on the screen. And in this build we have Aeons Hourglass, reducing its cooldown. If you've never tried investing into health regen in any of your builds, just try it. It feels really good. And a tip for farming Lokar: if you want it to be even safer, you can replace one of the Seals of the Void with a Haunted Steel. This will give you more attack damage converted to health. It'll also give you a skill called Bloodthirster, which will give you a huge amount of attack damage converted to health for about 8 seconds. And you can use this skill after Ascension wears off. This is when you're going to be the most vulnerable and likely to die from Lokar. So popping Bloodthirster when Ascension wears off will drastically decrease the odds that you're going to die. And when Bloodthirster wears off, Ascension should be back up off cooldown. And you can just rotate these 2 skills and it should allow you to face tank Lokar. I've had a lot of fun making and playing this build, and I hope you will too. That's going to be all for this video, and if you'd like to continue your education, enrollment is free. All you have to do is like and subscribe. I wish you the best of luck in all your adventures, and I hope to see you again soon.